Look, honey, I'm just gonna be real with you. That seat, it's gonna be a goddamn battleground for someone built like you. Brittany Langford's voice, sharp and venomous, cut through the quiet hum of the first-class cabin like a box cutter. Her hand, tipped with viciously red acrylics, made a dismissive, theatrical sweep toward the plush leather seat. The gesture was pure performance, dripping with a concern so fake it was insulting. Dr. Elena Vargas stopped dead in her tracks. The custom-tailored cashmere coat she wore, a shield of understated power, suddenly felt suffocating under the heat of 24 pairs of eyes turning to stare. The silence was instantaneous and absolute. The flight attendant, Brittany, tapped her clipboard with one of those crimson talons, her eyes doing a slow, disgusting crawl over Elena's body, from her polished Louboutin heels to the curves of her figure. The disgust wasn't even hidden. It was the point. "Ma'am," she said, the word a weaponized dart of condescension, "are you absolutely positive you're in the correct cabin?" All around them, a subtle symphony of modern schadenfreude began. iPhones slid from designer pockets. Screens unlocked. The little red record icons blinked into existence. A teenager a few rows back, his face illuminated by the glow of his screen, already had his live stream running. His viewer count flickered, climbing with sickening speed. The air, thick with recycled oxygen and entitlement, now crackled with a new poison, viral humiliation. Passengers who seconds before were immersed in their champagne and stock portfolios leaned forward, hungry for the drama. That viewer counter just kept climbing. But have you ever seen someone's entire world get systematically dismantled by their own ignorance? Have you ever watched a career die in real time? Well, buckle the hell up, because that's exactly what you're about to witness. Before we even get into it, if you know what's about to happen is pure unfiltered justice, I need you to smash that like button and hit subscribe, because you do not want to miss a single second of this. Flight 812 to DC, Gate C34. Remember that. It's the scene of the crime. Through it all, Dr. Elena Vargas's expression remained as impassive and elegant as carved obsidian. But her knuckles, gripping the handle of an exquisitely crafted leather briefcase, turned bone white. The corporate logo on the briefcase was partially obscured by a strap, a little clue hiding in plain sight. Brittany's smile stretched, a predatory slash of red lipstick. She was feeding on the attention. "I'm going to need to verify that boarding pass, ma'am," she announced, extending her hand with the imperious authority of a queen ruling a kingdom of airplane seats. Just protocol. The word was a lie, and everyone knew it. Without a single word, Elena passed her the ticket. Her eyes, deep and startlingly intelligent, never left Brittany's face. She wasn't just watching. She was assessing, cataloging, processing. Brittany took the boarding pass and put on a show, examining it like a homicide detective studying a piece of critical evidence. She held it close, then at arm's length. She even held it up to the cabin light as if expecting a hidden watermark to reveal the fraud. "Seat 2A, Brittany announced, her voice a cocktail of disbelief and mockery. "Well, isn't that something?" She then waved over Marcus Hale, the gate supervisor, a weedy man with a thin, nervous mustache that twitched with every breath. He scurried over, sensing a chance to assert his minor authority. Brittany leaned in, her voice a stage whisper designed to carry. "Marcus, I think we have a situation here. A compliance issue." She gestured vaguely at Elena, then at the seat. "You know our first-class clientele. They pay for a certain experience." The experience they were getting now was front-row seats to a corporate crucifixion. What Brittany and Marcus didn't know was that they weren't the stars of this show. They were the sacrificial lambs. Ignoring them completely, Elena moved with a fluid, practiced grace into seat 2A. She didn't squeeze. She didn't struggle. She settled, the leather sighing around her. The motion was deliberate, calm, the action of a person who belonged exactly where she was. She retrieved her phone, her fingers a blur across the screen. A text message dispatched into the ether, running a few minutes behind for the DepSec brief. "If the DOJ calls, patch them through to my encrypted line. Handle it." The message sent, a cascade of notifications lit up her screen. Missed calls from executive assistant. Urgent. Marcus squinted at the boarding pass in his hand, then looked at Elena, his brain struggling to compute the data. The woman radiated a quiet, formidable power that clashed with the narrative Brittany was weaving. But Brittany was his senior, so he defaulted to pathetic bureaucracy. "Ma'am," he began, puffing up his chest slightly. "I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to step aside so we can resolve this matter." "And what matter precisely would that be?" Elena's voice was soft, yet it sliced through the cabin noise with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. It was the voice of someone who had never in her adult life needed to raise it to be obeyed. "Well," Marcus faltered, glancing at Brittany for a lifeline. "You know, tickets. Sometimes they get mixed up. People can use someone else's frequent flyer points. For everyone's safety, we need to ensure proper identity verification." In Seat 5C, the teenager's live stream was now a full-blown phenomenon. "Y'all, you are watching straight-up discrimination happen live on Aeromax Flight 812, he narrated. "This is messed up." His viewer count shattered thousands. The comment section was a waterfall of outrage. "Fire her ass. That's racism. Somebody call a lawyer. Get their employee numbers." Meanwhile, a businessman in Seat 4B, impeccably dressed and quietly furious, had his laptop open. He wasn't tweeting. He was composing a detailed post on LinkedIn, the platform of the corporate world. Subject: witnessing blatant, systematic discrimination on Aeromax Flight 812. A threat. He began to type, naming names, detailing every word. Nearby, a flight attendant trainee named Sophia Hart watched from the galley doorway. She was discreetly recording the entire exchange on her company-issued tablet, ostensibly for training documentation. The look of horror on her face, however, suggested she knew she was capturing evidence for a corporate trial. The gate agent's radio on Marcus's belt crackled to life. "Flight 812, what's your status? We're showing a departure delay." Brittany grabbed her own radio, keying the mic with a triumphant smirk. "Just a minor passenger verification issue," she chirped. "Should be cleared up in a moment." Elena glanced at the timepiece on her wrist. A Patek Philippe Calatrava, a quiet statement of immense success. A gift from the Attorney General after she successfully prosecuted a landmark civil rights case against a Fortune 100 company. "Perfect," she murmured to herself, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. The delay was now part of the record. Emboldened by his growing audience, Marcus's confidence inflated. "Ma'am, for the safety and security of all passengers, I am now calling airport security." He delivered the line with the gravity of a man defusing a bomb. "Of course," Elena replied, her tone laced with an amusement that seemed to unnerve him more than any anger could have. Her phone buzzed again. The caller ID was Stark, Pentagon conference line. She declined the call, typing a quick reply. "In the middle of a critical field assessment. We'll call back shortly." Brittany, sensing the tide might be turning, decided to go all in. Her voice rose, playing to the back rows now. "I have been doing this job for years. We have strict policies against ticket fraud, and I can spot a fake document from a mile away." The live stream exploded past thousands of viewers. Donations started flooding into a hastily created legal defense fund for the passenger on Flight 812. The comments were a wildfire. "Dox the airline. Get her name. Brittany Langford is about to learn about the internet." A passenger in Seat 6A, a day trader, pulled up Aeromax's stock ticker on her phone. She watched as it took a small, then a slightly larger dip. Mentions of the airline on social media had spiked dramatically in the last few minutes, all of it violently negative. That's when Sophia Hart, the trainee, saw it. The little detail Brittany and Marcus had missed in their performance of outrage. Elena's briefcase. The partially hidden logo. She could make out the letters. Aviation Administration. And below it, smaller text of justice. And the boarding pass lying on the seat next to Elena's briefcase had a detail they hadn't bothered to read. Fair class. Govalite. FFP DOJ AX001 Department of Justice. But Brittany and Marcus were too high on their own authority, too busy playing to the cheap seats. The pilot's voice, calm and professional, crackled over the PA system. "Folks, apologies from the flight deck. We're looking at a brief delay while our ground crew sorts out a small passenger boarding issue. We appreciate your patience." Elena casually opened her briefcase, not wide, just enough to retrieve a fountain pen. In that brief moment, the light caught the contents. Thick, official-looking folders bound in red tape stamped with words like classified and confidential. A government security clearance badge clipped to an interior pocket flashed under the cabin lights. Brittany doubled down, her voice now shrill with desperation. I don't care what's in her briefcase. Anyone can buy fake government IDs on the internet these days. We're calling security." Two airport security officers appeared, their presence immediately sucking the remaining levity from the air. The senior officer, a man named Derek Brooks with tired eyes that had seen everything, took in the scene. The ring of passengers with phones out, the belligerent flight attendant, and the unnervingly calm woman in seat 2A. His internal detector was screaming. "What's the problem here?" Derek Brooks asked, his voice a low rumble. Marcus puffed up his chest. "Potential ticket fraud, officer. This passenger may be using credentials that do not belong to her." Derek Brooks's eyes fell on Elena. He saw the expensive coat, the steel in her posture, the quiet confidence that radiated from her like a force field. His years of reading people in tense situations sent up every red flag he owned, and they were all pointed at the airline staff. "Ma'am," he said, his tone respectful, "may I please see your identification?" Elena reached into her briefcase and produced a simple, yet heavy, leather credential wallet. She handed it to him. Derek Brooks opened it. His eyes, which had seen it all, widened almost imperceptibly. He snapped it shut in less than a couple of seconds and handed it back, his entire demeanor changing. He now stood straighter, his posture subtly deferential. "And there's no issue with your ticket, correct?" "Not at all, Officer Brooks," Elena said, having read his name tag from her seat. Brittany saw the power shift, and it drove her into a panic. "I don't care what kind of ID she has," she shrieked. "We have policies. There are rules about passenger suitability and seating." The teenager's live stream had just rocketed past thousands of viewers. Local news affiliates were now being tagged by hundreds of viewers, demanding they send a camera crew. The gate area had transformed. People from other flights were now crowding the doorway, drawn by the spectacle. Phones were everywhere, a forest of lenses capturing Brittany's career immolation from every conceivable angle. "I need a supervisor at gate C34. Derek Brooks spoke quietly into his radio. "Potentially sensitive situation." Within a minute, the chief of airport security, Lena Hart, arrived. Her silver badge was polished to a mirror shine, her presence sharp and authoritative. She wasn't just a cop. She was a command-level officer, and she looked at the scene with the cold, calculating eyes of someone who had handled bomb threats and hostage negotiations. The live stream, now titled "Karen Flight Attendant versus Mysterious Boss Lady," shot past tens of thousands of live viewers. The comments were a blur. "CNN needs to see this. This woman is too damn calm. Something big is about to drop. She's got that I own the building vibe." Brittany, seeing Chief Hart, thought she had found her savior. She made one last fatal gamble. "Chief Hart, thank God this passenger is refusing to comply and is using what I believe are fraudulent documents to occupy a first-class seat. I've been an attendant for years. I know fraud when I see it." Lena Hart ignored Brittany completely. She studied Elena. Every instinct she had, honed by decades of federal law enforcement before taking this job, screamed that this woman was the real deal. From the posture and the Patek Philippe to the calm, detached amusement with which she watched the chaos unfold. This was a federal agent, a high-ranking one. "Ma'am, I apologize for this disturbance," Lena Hart said, her voice betraying none of the alarm bells going off in her head. "May I see your credentials?" Elena handed over the wallet again. Lena Hart opened it. Her expression, unlike Derek Brooks's, did not widen. It tightened into a mask of professional gravity. She snapped it shut and returned it with a new level of profound respect. "Dr. Vargas," she said, her voice now firm and clear for everyone to hear. "My sincere apologies. I believe there has been a profound misunderstanding." The confidence in Brittany's face shattered. "Doctor," she sneered, incredulous. "She never said she was a doctor." "She shouldn't have to," Lena Hart shot back, her voice like ice. On his laptop, the businessman hit publish. His LinkedIn post went live, detailing every discriminatory word from Brittany and Marcus. Within minutes, it had hundreds of shares. Meanwhile, a frantic Marcus was on the phone to Aeromax corporate headquarters. "Sir, we have a major situation at Gate C34. It's a passenger complaint, but it's escalating. There's media exposure. The passenger has significant-looking credentials." Across the country, in a sterile corporate office park, the Aeromax legal, PR, and customer relations departments suddenly found themselves in a crisis conference call with the stock ticker showing a sudden, alarming drop. Sophia Hart, the trainee, watched Lena Hart's face and began to slowly, deliberately back away from Brittany, angling her tablet to perfectly capture Brittany's unhinged meltdown. The pilot's voice, now laced with a thread of tension, came over the intercom again. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're looking at an additional delay. Air traffic control has asked us to hold at the gate." A complete lie designed to buy time. Elena's phone buzzed, a text from a number she had on speed dial. AG Personal, the Attorney General. Pentagon briefing starts soon. Joint Chiefs are waiting. "Are you wheels up?" She typed back a simple, infuriatingly calm response. "Slight ground traffic issue. We'll make the meeting." Brittany watched this exchange, a cold dread finally seeping into her consciousness. Regular doctors didn't get texts from the Pentagon. Regular people didn't stay this composed while being publicly flayed. And they certainly didn't smile with the faint, detached air of a scientist observing an experiment reaching its spectacular conclusion. "I don't care who she thinks she is," Brittany screamed, her voice cracking. It was a full-blown tantrum now. "We have a policy. If a passenger cannot fit comfortably into their assigned seat without encroaching on another passenger, they are required to purchase a second seat or take a different flight." A wave of groans and disapproving murmurs swept through the watching crowd. By now, everyone had noticed Elena's quiet power, the deference from the security chief, the sheer quality of her attire. Brittany wasn't a hero enforcing rules. She was a bully who had picked the wrong target. "All units stand down," Lena Hart commanded into her radio. "I repeat, stand down. This is not a security incident." But Brittany couldn't hear it. The roar of her own arrogance was deafening. She was performing now, a final desperate act for the digital coliseum that had formed around her. "Ma'am," she said, pointing a trembling red-tipped finger at Elena, "I am ordering you to deplane now. You are disrupting a federal flight and causing passenger discomfort." And that's when Dr. Elena Vargas finally stood up. She rose to her full height, and while she was indeed a woman with curves, she was also tall, commanding, and her presence seemed to instantly dominate the space. She towered over the screeching Brittany by at least several inches. "Brittany Langford," Elena said, reading the flight attendant's name tag aloud. Her voice was no longer soft. It was the voice of command, the voice that briefed presidents and federal judges. "Employee ID 73451, years of service, I believe you said." Brittany could only nod, suddenly speechless. "And Marcus Hale," Elena continued, her gaze shifting to the gate supervisor, who seemed to shrink under her stare. "How many years have you been with Aeromax?" "Years," he squeaked automatically, utterly confused. Elena then opened her briefcase, not just a crack this time. She opened it fully. The passengers in the first few rows gasped. The manila folders stamped top-secret sensitive compartmented information were now fully visible. The government ID badge was clear as day, and tucked inside was a sheaf of documents on heavy, expensive paper bearing an official letterhead that was visible even from several feet away. The teenagers' live stream viewer count hit tens of thousands. Donations to the defense fund tipped past thousands. The chat was a vertical scroll of pure insanity. Chief Hart's radio crackled. "Chief, we have media vans from every major network pulling up to Terminal C. They're requesting access to Gate C34. "Negative," Lena Hart replied, her voice grim. "Secure the perimeter. No media access. Not until I say so." But it was too late. The LinkedIn thread now had over 1,000 shares. The hashtag Aeromax Assault was the #1 trend. Sophia Hart, the trainee, texted her direct supervisor. "You need to get down to C34. Brittany is about to single-handedly destroy this company. I have everything on video." The Aeromax customer relations hotline lit up. The first complaint call came in shortly after the confrontation began. By a short while later, they had fielded over 100 calls. The crisis management team was scrambling, trying to figure out what was happening as Wall Street analysts began issuing alerts about the stock's sudden, unexplained volatility. All eyes were on Dr. Elena Vargas as she calmly, methodically began to arrange documents on her seatback tray table. Her movements were precise, efficient, the actions of a person who had spent a lifetime organizing evidence and building inescapable cases. Brittany, cornered and terrified, made one final fatal play. Security! I demand this passenger be physically removed from this aircraft immediately. She is non-compliant and a threat to the crew. Lena Hart looked at Brittany with a disgust so profound it was almost pity. The only threat I see here, she said slowly, is the one coming from airline staff. I don't care. Brittany's voice shattered into a hysterical shriek. I don't care if she's a doctor or a lawyer or the damn Queen of England. She doesn't belong in first class, and I will not back down. Those words, she doesn't belong in first class, they hung in the air, a naked confession of her bigotry. Dr. Elena Vargas smiled. It wasn't a smile of malice. It was the quiet, deeply satisfied smile of a grandmaster who had just watched her opponent walk directly into a checkmate she had set up many moves ago. She reached into her briefcase and withdrew a single thick document. The header was unmistakable, visible to everyone in the front 3 rows. Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division. Lena Hart immediately recognized the federal implications and took a deliberate step back, physically distancing herself from the corporate detonation that was about to occur. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, a final futile attempt at normalcy. Ladies and gentlemen, we are preparing for immediate departure. All passengers should be seated with your seatbelts fastened. Tens of thousands of people were now watching the live stream. Brittany Langford had no idea she was no longer just a flight attendant. She was a national news story. The fall was coming, and it was going to be biblical. This is the moment everything changed. You still here? Good, because it's about to get real. I'm talking career-ending, company-destroying, stone-cold justice. If you are ready for this, type justice in the comment section right now. Let's get it. The moment of reckoning. Elena placed the document on her tray table with the deliberateness of a judge handing down a sentence. The official seal of the Department of Justice seemed to catch every light in the cabin. She then put on a pair of elegant reading glasses, a simple gesture that, in that context, transformed her from the accused into the chief prosecutor. The briefcase was now fully open, a portable office of federal power, revealing organized stacks of classified materials, each bound with a bright red confidential cover sheet. Brittany leaned forward, her eyes squinting, still clinging to the wreckage of her delusion. I don't care what kind of fake document. Her voice trailed off, strangled in her throat as she finally read the words on the top sheet. Aeromax Airlines Federal Contractor Compliance Agreement. Annual award value 2 through 83,000. The color drained from Brittany's face. She didn't just go pale, she went translucent, the blood receding from her skin like the tide going out on a desolate beach. Elena's manicured finger, steady and sure, traced down the page to a signature block at the bottom, printed in bold type. Dr. Elena M. Vargas, Deputy Attorney General, Civil Rights Division, Federal Contract Authorization. The cabin, which had been buzzing, fell into a profound church-like silence. The only sounds were the whir of the ventilation system and the almost silent clicking of dozens of phones still recording. Chief Hart took another step back. She'd spent her life in law enforcement and knew what she was seeing. This wasn't just an angry VIP. This was the government in person conducting an audit with extreme prejudice. Marcus's radio squawked, the voice on the other end tinny and panicked. Gate C-34, we have the Aeromax CEO's office on an emergency patch. Put him through immediately. Sophia Hart, the trainee, expertly zoomed her tablet's camera in on the document header, capturing the damning evidence in crisp high definition. Her hands were shaking. She wasn't just recording the end of Brittany's career anymore. She was recording the potential end of the airline itself. The teenager's live stream went supernova, breaking tens of thousands of simultaneous viewers. The chat was moving too fast for human eyes to read. Holy shit, she's the feds. Deputy Attorney General? Brittany is so fired she's going to be vaporized. $1 billion contract? Oh, this is nuclear. Elena then removed a second document from her briefcase. This one bore the seal of the Department of Defense and had today's date stamped at the top. Subject, Federal Contractor Renewal Recommendation. Deadline, soon. She held it up so Brittany and Marcus could both see it clearly. I have limited time, Elena stated, her voice as calm and level as a test pilot's, "to submit my division's official recommendation to both the Secretary of Defense and the Attorney General regarding Aeromax Airline's continued eligibility for all federal contracts." Brittany's knees gave out. She physically sagged, grabbing the back of a seat to keep herself upright. Her acrylic nails made a scraping sound on the expensive leather. "This contract," Elena continued, her cadence precise and unforgiving, the words of a congressional briefing, "covers not only military personnel transport, but also sensitive cargo logistics, federal witness relocation services, and emergency FAA coordination across hundreds of domestic and international airports. Annual value, again, is billions of dollars, and it is, of course, renewable annually, contingent upon strict compliance with federal anti-discrimination statutes." Marcus's radio shrieked again. "We have an emergency all-hands conference call with the CEO's office, the board chairman, and the lead counsel. Stock has been halted." "Halted? What is the situation at C-34? Lena Hart quietly positioned herself between the first-class seats and the economy cabin, using her body to create a buffer. She had seen corporate entities destroyed by federal investigations before. This felt like watching a skyscraper being brought down in a controlled demolition. Elena opened her phone and scrolled to a contact labeled AG Direct Secure Line. Her thumb hovered over the call button. She looked directly into Brittany's terrified eyes. "Would you prefer I call the Attorney General now and give him my recommendation?" she asked, her voice dangerously soft. "Or would you like to continue our fascinating discussion about my physical dimensions?" That one phrase, physical dimensions, now carried the weight of a multi-billion-dollar federal civil rights lawsuit. Brittany finally, truly understood. This wasn't a passenger who would write an angry email. This was the woman who could, with a single signature, sever the financial artery that kept her entire company alive. The LinkedIn post from the businessman in 4B had now been shared over thousands of times. The hashtag #AeroMaxMeltdown was trending nationally. Major news networks were no longer just assigning reporters. They were dispatching their top political and corporate correspondents. Aeromax stock, which had been halted, reopened and immediately plummeted further. Sophia Hart's supervisor texted her back in a panic. "Stop recording. Power down your device. Legal is en route. Do not speak to anyone." But it was too late. The training footage had already been automatically backed up to a corporate cloud server. The live stream was being screen recorded by tens of thousands of people. The story was out of the bottle, and it was a genie of pure destruction. "The corporate firestorm!" A panicked voice crackled over Brittany's radio, broadcast for the whole cabin to hear. "Flight 812, you need to identify this passenger right now. We have the Federal Contracts Division screaming at us." Elena heard it and decided to help. Dr. Elena Vargas, Deputy Attorney General of the United States Civil Rights Division. She announced clearly, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Employee ID, Delta Juliet 001, security clearance level, top secret, SCI." She delivered her credentials with the casual air of someone ordering a coffee, and each word was a sledgehammer blow to the smoking crater that was once Brittany Langford's career. Lena Hart's radio erupted. "All units, Aeromax C-Suite executives are en route to the airport, code 3. ETA shortly. Media containment is now a top priority. Lock down the terminal." The teenager switched his stream to YouTube Live to reach a new audience, and tens of thousands more viewers flooded in within moments. Elena retrieved a third document from her case. Federal Contractor Compliance Audit. Active investigation. Discrimination violations. She opened it to a page thick with yellow highlighter ink. Section 18, subsection C, she read, as if quoting scripture, clearly stipulates that any federal contractor found to be engaging in discriminatory practices on the basis of race, religion, gender, or physical appearance faces immediate summary contract termination and a multi-year blacklisting from all future government business. Brittany finally found her voice. It was a pathetic, whimpering whisper. I was just following our company policy." Which policy would that be? Elena's tone was no longer calm. It was surgical, cutting, and clinical. The one that empowers employees to make discretionary judgments based on a passenger's physical appearance? Or is it the one that permits the public humiliation of a citizen based on their body size? Marcus, desperate to save himself, threw Brittany under the bus. Dr. Vargas, there's been a horrible mistake, a misunderstanding. Brittany she was confused by the training module. I am intimately familiar with Aeromax's customer service and compliance training protocols. Elena finished for him, her eyes locking onto his. I reviewed them myself in extensive detail as part of our division's annual security and civil rights partnership evaluation. The implication hit Marcus with the force of a physical impact. They knew. The Department of Justice had been studying them, auditing their policies. They knew about the systemic issues. This wasn't just a random incident. It was the final, perfect piece of evidence in an existing federal case. The call. Elena's phone rang. The ringtone a simple discreet chime. The caller ID was just 2 words. Pentagon JCS. She answered with professional authority. Dr. Vargas. The voice on the other end, a deep baritone accustomed to command, was audible to the entire front of the cabin. Elena, we're starting the full security brief soon. Is the recommendation on the Aeromax contract renewal going to be ready? Absolutely, General, Elena replied smoothly. In fact, I'm conducting some impromptu field research on contractor compliance at this very moment. The findings are illuminating. There was a short pause. Good, the general said, a new hardness in his voice. The secretary is particularly concerned about this one. We've been receiving a number of disturbing intelligence reports about their internal culture. Brittany's face went from ashen to a ghastly shade of gray. The Pentagon was already investigating them. She hadn't created a problem. She had confirmed it. She had become the living embodiment of their corporate rot. I will have my full, comprehensive recommendation filed within the hour, General, Elena continued. The field data I've collected today is quite conclusive. She ended the call and looked straight at Brittany. The general sends his best. The live stream peaked at tens of thousands of viewers. The phrase, federal contractor fail, had become a worldwide trend. Chief Hart got an urgent text from the airport director. CNN, Fox, and MSNBC are all live from the terminal curb. They're reporting a national security incident. What the hell is going on? The evidence chain. Elena began to meticulously document the scene with her government-issued phone. Each photo was automatically encrypted, time-stamped, and geolocated, admissible as federal evidence. She photographed her boarding pass. She took a clear shot of Brittany's and Marcus's name tags. She recorded a slow pan of the watching passengers, documenting the dozens of witnesses. Brittany Langford, employee ID 73451. She spoke clearly, her phone's audio recorder capturing every syllable for the official record. At approximately the time of boarding, you made the public declaration that my physical dimensions rendered me unsuitable for my ticketed first-class seat. You then demanded I produce my ticket for verification, citing your personal assessment of my physical appearance. You then escalated to calling for my removal by security, again, based on discriminatory body size bias. Is that an accurate summary? Sophia Hart's tablet, still recording, caught every damning word. The corporate legal team would later spend thousands of billable hours analyzing that single piece of footage. Marcus Hale, gate supervisor, years of service, Elena continued, relentless. You publicly supported these discriminatory actions. You initiated a call for identity verification without cause. And you escalated the situation by involving security, citing fabricated concerns based on physical appearance, correct? Marcus looked like he was about to vomit. His years of perfect service, his pension, his entire career. It was all evaporating before his very eyes. The pilot finally emerged from the cockpit, summoned from the flight deck by the sheer insanity of the ongoing delay. He was a veteran captain, a man who had seen everything. He took one look at the scene, the federal documents, the chief of security, the sea of recording phones, and the ashen faces of his cabin crew, and immediately understood this was far beyond his pay grade. He retreated back into the cockpit and made a call to air traffic control. Tower, this is Aeromax 812. We are requesting an indefinite ground delay. We have a special passenger services issue that requires senior corporate resolution. The ultimatum. Elena closed her briefcase. The sound of the latches clicking shut was like the cocking of a gun. She had it all. Documented, witnessed, recorded. Systematic discrimination by a major federal contractor performed in public in real time. Aeromax Airlines has limited time, she announced, her voice resonating with the full authority of the United States Department of Justice to present me with a formal, written, and actionable remediation plan. Remediation for what? Brittany asked, her voice a hoarse croak. For federal civil rights violations, Elena replied coldly. For discriminatory business practices and for a catastrophic breach of your federal contractor compliance standards. Your CEO's office should be calling for you momentarily. As if on cue, Marcus's radio exploded. The voice was new, clipped, and utterly terrified. Gate C34, this is the office of CEO Derek Brooks. We have the General Counsel, the entire Federal Contracts Division, and our Senior VP of Public Relations on an emergency line. Patch them through now. Brittany Langford finally grasped the almost cosmic scale of her fuck-up. She hadn't just insulted a passenger. She had personally triggered a federal incident that was about to cost her company billions of dollars, vaporize thousands of jobs, and make her the most infamous flight attendant in the history of modern aviation. Elena just checked her watch. Moments and counting. The clock was ticking. The entire country was watching. And judgment was coming. The CEO arrives. A tidal wave of panic in expensive suits burst through the gate area. Leading the charge was Derek Brooks, the CEO of Aeromax, a man whose normally tanned and composed face was now a mask of ashen terror. His expensive suit was rumpled, his tie was askew, and he looked like a man who had just watched his entire empire burn to the ground on a CNBC chyron. Trailing in his wake was a phalanx of executives, the chief legal officer, the head of PR, the director of federal contracts. They didn't walk. They scrambled. Aeromax stock had plummeted a staggering percentage. Over billions of dollars of market capitalization had been wiped out, while Brooks was speeding to the airport. It was a corporate apocalypse in real time. Brooks approached Elena with the desperate pleading energy of a man begging for his company's life. Ma'am, Dr. Vargas, I'm Derek Brooks, the CEO of Aeromax. I have just been made aware of this horrifying, inexcusable misunderstanding. Elena looked up from her paperwork, her gaze steady and cold. Mr. Brooks, your timing is impeccable. According to my watch, you have limited time before I brief the Attorney General and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The live stream, which now had over 100,000 concurrent viewers, erupted. People recognized Brooks from news interviews and shareholder meetings. The comments were a digital firestorm. The CEO himself is there. Oh my God, she brought the king to his knees. This isn't a complaint. It's a corporate coup. Brooks' chief legal officer, a sharp woman named Amara Jones, immediately saw the federal documentation spread across Elena's tray table. She recognized Form 1138, the Federal Civil Rights Violation Report, a document that was legendary in corporate legal circles as the precursor to a Justice Department investigation that could cripple a company for years. Dr. Vargas, on behalf of every single one of the tens of thousands of employees of Aeromax Airlines, Brooks began, his voice thick with a well-rehearsed yet utterly sincere panic. I offer our most profound and absolute apology for the completely unacceptable actions of our staff. Your apology is noted for the record, Mr. Brooks, Elena said, her tone clinical. However, I am currently operating under federal contractor compliance protocols. This situation requires a formal, written remediation plan to be presented within. She checked her watch again, a theatrical gesture of power. A short window. The federal ultimatum. Elena reopened her briefcase and withdrew the main Aeromax contract folder. The document was several inches thick, bound in official blue government binders bearing classification stamps that made Amara Jones's blood run cold. Total contract value billions of dollars annually, Elena read aloud, her voice unwavering. This agreement covers all security-cleared operations across hundreds of airports, including the transport of military personnel, the oversight of FAA-mandated passenger screening and anti-terrorism coordination efforts, and per Section 18, subsection C, it is renewable annually based on unimpeachable compliance with all federal anti-discrimination statutes. Amara Jones stepped forward, her face a grim mask. Dr. Vargas, we are prepared to offer immediate summary termination of every employee involved in this incident, and we will launch a full, comprehensive, and transparent internal investigation. Ms. Jones, Elena interrupted not unkindly. I'm familiar with your work. Georgetown Law, editor of the Law Review. You, more than anyone here, understand that federal contractors do not operate under the same rules as private companies. You operate under a higher, constitutionally mandated standard of civil rights obligations, correct? Amara Jones could only nod, a mute confirmation. This was her worst professional nightmare made manifest. The corporate panic metrics. Brooks's phone vibrated incessantly with text messages from his crisis team at headquarters. Stock down significantly. Halted again. Senators from 3 different committees are calling, demanding hearings. Our competitor airlines have already started calling the Pentagon to inquire about bidding on the contract. The flight attendants union is demanding an emergency meeting. Dr. Vargas, Brooks pleaded, we are prepared to do anything. We will implement immediate systemic changes, diversity and bias training for every single one of our tens of thousands of employees. We'll create an independent civilian oversight committee, a zero-tolerance policy that will be the new industry standard. Elena consulted a small leather-bound book from her briefcase, the Federal Contractor Compliance Manual. Those are standard remediation measures, Mr. Brooks, she said, looking up. However, the evidence collected here today strongly suggests that your issues are deeply systemic, not merely the result of a few isolated instances of poor judgment. The Pentagon applies pressure. Elena's phone rang. The screen displayed SecDef Office Urgent, the Office of the Secretary of Defense. Dr. Vargas, the voice was crisp, female, and carried immense authority. The Secretary needs your Aeromax assessment, now. We have a congressional inquiry that's already been scheduled, and the media is breaking down our doors. Understood, Elena replied calmly. I am conducting the final field evaluation as we speak. The data I've gathered is conclusive. Good. The Senate Armed Services Committee is asking about this. They want to know if a company with this kind of culture can be trusted with military personnel. The Secretary needs your final recommendation shortly. Brooks watched, horrified, as his company's entire fate was debated in a casual phone call by people who moved in the highest echelons of global power. The data presentation. Elena produced more documents from her seemingly bottomless briefcase of doom. Federal contractor performance reviews. They were internal reports detailing a horrifying pattern, declining diversity hiring metrics, a steep increase in passenger discrimination complaints, a pattern of corporate responses that a federal investigator would later describe in a report as systematically negligent and deliberately obfuscating. My division's audit shows your company has received hundreds of actionable discrimination complaints in the last stretch of time alone, she read from the report. Your internal resolution rate is less than 10%. The average settlement paid to victims is a paltry sum. In federal terms, Mr. Brooks, this isn't an incident. This is a pattern and practice of institutional discrimination. Brooks' face was now completely white. They had been tracking them. The government had been quietly building a massive case against Aeromax for years. Today's incident hadn't created the fire. It had just been the spark that lit the fuse on a mountain of explosive evidence. Amara Jones frantically scanned the data, recognizing internal reports she herself had authored, reports that had recommended sweeping policy changes that Brooks and the board had dismissed as too expensive. The global social media tsunami. The live stream had spawned hundreds of smaller clips and reaction videos. The hashtag Justice for Dr. Vargas was now trending in over 60 countries. The ACLU, the NAACP, and every other major civil rights organization had issued powerful statements of condemnation. A United States Senator, the chair of the Transportation Committee, tweeted, "Federal contractors are an extension of the federal government itself. They will be held to the highest standards. My committee is launching a full investigation into Aeromax's compliance failures immediately." The tweet was retweeted tens of thousands of times in minutes. Boycott threats crashed the Aeromax website. Their phone lines were so flooded with cancellation requests that the system went down. The remediation demands. Elena consulted her federal compliance manual one last time and then looked directly at Brooks. Her voice was no longer that of an investigator. It was the voice of a judge delivering a sentence. Standard remediation for systematic, pattern, and practice discrimination by a Class A federal contractor includes, she began listing the terms like a death sentence. 1. Immediate termination of all personnel involved, up to and including the supervisory chain responsible for their training. 2. Mandatory federally supervised anti-bias and civil rights training for every single customer-facing employee. 3. The establishment of an independent, federally appointed civil rights monitoring ombudsman embedded within your corporate structure for a period of years. 4. The establishment of a victim compensation and community investment fund of tens of millions of dollars to be administered by the Department of Justice. Brooks' finance chief, who was listening in on speakerphone, quickly calculated that the compensation fund alone would wipe out their entire quarter's profit. The cost of the training and monitoring would be catastrophic. And, Elena continued, twisting the knife, any federal contractor found guilty of systematic discrimination is immediately placed on a multi-month probationary status, subject to quarterly full-scope compliance reviews by my office. Corporate surrender. Brooks made the only calculation a CEO in his position could make. Acknowledge catastrophic failure and accept devastating terms or lose the federal contract and face immediate, irreversible bankruptcy. Dr. Vargas, he said, his voice hoarse, Aeromax accepts full and unconditional responsibility. We will commit to every single remediation measure you have outlined. We will meet and exceed every federal requirement. We will become the industry standard for diversity, inclusion, and civil rights. Commitments require signatures, Mr. Brooks, Elena said. I will require signed, legally binding agreements to all of these remediation measures faxed to my office before I can even consider recommending a probationary continuation of your contract. Amara Jones was already on the phone to her team at headquarters, yelling into the phone, Draft the resolutions now, all of them. Get ready for an emergency board vote via teleconference. The federal decision. Elena's phone buzzed. A final text from the Pentagon. Dr. Vargas, I need the recommendation. Now. Congress is scheduling the hearing for tomorrow. Your assessment is the cornerstone of our entire case. She typed her reply. Recommendation is prepared. A corporate compliance and remediation plan is currently under review. Briefing you in person shortly. The response was instantaneous. The secretary wants a personal debrief soon in his office. This is now a national security priority. Brooks overheard the exchange and finally understood that his airline's shitty racist corporate culture had become a national security issue being debated at the cabinet level of the United States government. The final terms. Elena collected her federal forms and looked Derek Brooks directly in the eye. Mr. Brooks, your company has a short window to implement the following: the termination of all responsible personnel, the establishment of a multi-billion-dollar diversity and community investment initiative, the full installation of the independent federal monitor, and a public-facing transparency report published quarterly. Do you agree? Agreed, Brooks croaked without a moment's hesitation. Failure to meet any one of those benchmarks will trigger immediate summary contract termination and a multi-year federal blacklisting, Elena added. Completely understood, he whispered. Your legal team will draft the full compliance agreements and have them on my desk within the next day for federal review. Amara Jones was already coordinating the emergency board meeting. The resolution. Elena sealed her documents into a federal evidence envelope and closed her briefcase with a final, satisfying click. Mr. Brooks, your company has, for today, avoided full federal contract termination. Be advised, however, that Aeromax Airlines is now under the direct and enhanced civil rights monitoring of the United States Department of Justice. Brooks exhaled a ragged, shuddering breath. He had saved the company, but at a tremendous cost. It would survive, scarred and forever changed. Dr. Vargas, thank you. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to make this right. Elena stood, adjusting her cashmere coat with the same unshakable dignity she had displayed from the very beginning. Mr. Brooks, she said, her voice now carrying a note of profound historical gravity. Federal contractors do not simply serve a client. They serve the American people. Today's incident was a stark and necessary reminder of why those standards of service are not optional. The live stream, with over 150,000 people watching, had captured the single most stunning moment of corporate accountability in the history of aviation. Brittany Langford had already been escorted off the premises by security, her career and reputation incinerated. Marcus Hale had been suspended pending an investigation that would undoubtedly lead to his firing. And Sophia Hart, the trainee who had the courage to document the truth, would be promoted and lauded as a corporate hero. Dr. Elena Vargas, her work here complete, prepared to take her flight to her Pentagon briefing, a briefing that would fundamentally reshape federal contractor oversight for a generation. The immediate crisis was over. The real revolution, however, was just beginning. Later, that single dignified stand had transformed an entire industry. Dr. Elena Vargas's approach, which became known in federal circles as the Vargas doctrine, was now the gold standard for how to handle corporate malfeasance. It wasn't about revenge, it was about reform. It wasn't about a lawsuit, it was about a legacy. Her story became mandatory reading at business schools and federal training academies, a testament to how one person, armed with quiet courage, profound preparation, and institutional power, could dismantle a system of injustice without ever raising her voice. These are the stories that need to be told. These real-life accounts show us that true power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it speaks in a calm, firm voice, armed with facts and the unwavering conviction that things can and must be better. It's a lesson that transforming our world doesn't always require a protest. Sometimes it requires a plan. Your own voice matters more than you know. When you witness something wrong, when you see an injustice, document it. Share it. Hold the powerful accountable, not just with outrage, but with strategy. Please subscribe to this channel for more stories of quiet courage that are changing the world. These real-life accounts of strategic dignity are the blueprints for a better future. And now I want to hear from you. Comment below and tell me about a time you witnessed an injustice that needed a systemic solution, not just a temporary fix. Your story could be the spark for the next great change. Share this video with everyone you know who needs to be reminded that real power isn't about the position you hold, but about the principles you're willing to defend. Thank you for watching. Remember, the most profound revolutions in history have always begun with one person's dignified, unwavering stand. The revolution continues. Be a part of it.